Okay, hello everybody. If people can come on in, we're going to start the press conference right now. First of all, I just want to say welcome to everybody here. Thank you for coming to the Impossible Foods launch of the Impossible Burger 2.0. This is the most delicious, nutritious, sustainable, and versatile plant-based meat ever. And it actually rivals beef from ground-up cow cadavers for taste, versatility, and nutrition. It's a pretty amazing product. And in fact, you guys have already started trying it. But in about a half hour, a bunch of interesting new plates are going to come out, including tacos, nachos, empanadas, albóndigas, and even a steak tartare. So please try everything. We will be here all night long. You will get plenty of time with our executives, as well as a celebrity chef who I will introduce very, very soon. I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. You're probably like, why? Food's not even a technology. Why would you launch it at CES, right? Like, how is a burger at all comparable to like the next gen Samsung Galaxy, right? Or like, how is a taco comparable to like an electric vehicle with autonomous drive powered by solar energy with a perpetual motion machine behind the wheel, right? Well, actually, technology and food are totally synonymous. In fact, food is the most important technology on our planet. It's literally required for life. It's also been failing to innovate for about 10,000 years. That's when humans started killing animals and cooking them as a cheap source of protein. But there are some problems with that, and we're going to discuss it tonight and what the solution is and talk about the future of food. So with that, I want to invite up here three people. First one is Dr. Patrick O. Brown, Pat Brown. Come on up, Pat. Grab a microphone. Pat Brown is the former pediatrician. Pat is the professor emeritus of biochemistry at Stanford University. He is a Howard Hughes medical investigator, former Howard Hughes medical investigator. He is the co-founder of the Public Library of Science, and he is the inventor of the DNA microarray. In 2009, he actually took a sabbatical from his job at Stanford, and I don't know if it was a midlife crisis or what, but he decided to start thinking about how he could have the most impact at the rest of his life. And so at the end of his sabbatical, he came back and had this crazy idea to found a startup to replace the need for animals in the food chain. And he is now the founder and CEO of Impossible Foods. Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, Rachel.
Okay, then next I want to introduce, you want to give applause? That's great, thanks. Next, I want to introduce Dr. David Lipman. David, come on up. David is actually one of the most highly cited scientists in biomedical research. He was one of the founding leaders of the National Center for Biotechnology Information. He's worked super closely with the Centers for Disease Control, with the Food and Drug Administration, with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. He also is responsible for creating the infrastructure and the tools that helped humanity map the human genome. So pretty amazing guy. And a little known fact is that Dr. David Lipman is actually the son of a cattleman and a kosher butcher. And he grew up in his dad's meat market, literally, in Rochester, New York. So thank you, David, for coming here. Okay, next we have Chef Mary Sue Milliken. Come on in. Can you guys cut a path for Mary Sue? Mary Sue Milliken was a classically trained French chef until 1984, when she and her best friend, Susan Feniger, jumped in their Volkswagen Beetle and crossed the border south to Mexico. They spent a long time studying the techniques and recipes of Lindo Mexico, and they went everywhere from street hawkers in Mexico City to palapas on the playa in Acapulco to really learn the most detailed understanding of Mexican cuisine. They came back and they launched a restaurant called Border Grill. This became probably the most influential restaurant in America for Mexican cuisine. It revolutionized Mexican cuisine in America. And it also, Mary Sue has become an amazing advocate for sustainable food. In fact, just a few weeks ago, she was at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology working with their media lab on how to make sustainable food. So she's got 6 Border Grills in California and Nevada. She's about to open a 7th in Santa Monica. And just last month, she won the Julia Child Foundation Award for Lifetime Achievement. And that's because she had such a significant contribution to cuisine and culture. So thank you, Mary Sue, for joining us. Okay. As I mentioned, this is a news conference for you guys, so jump in anytime, raise your hand, shout it out, do whatever you want. I'll kick it off, but please start throwing your questions at these guys. Don't give them softball questions. Go hard and have a good time. So I'll just start with Pat. Again, this is the first time CES has ever featured food as a technology. Convince the skeptics in here why you think food is a technology.
Well, first to the general question, you've already partly answered it, is that food is actually the most fundamental and ancient human technology. The food that you have on your plate every day is actually the product of thousands of years of research and exploration and experimentation and discovery to figure out what parts of what plants and animals are safe to eat, delicious, nutritious, and also how best to process and prepare those ingredients to make something delicious and healthy to eat. And on top of that, how to figure out how to cultivate and to scale and to distribute and to store food so that healthy, delicious food is available to everyone on Earth. So in absolutely every important way, food is completely a technology. Another question, I guess, is, okay, so food is a technology, so why is Impossible Foods the first food company to be represented at CES? And the answer is that Impossible Foods is developing the essential technology to save humanity from the greatest threat to the survival of the planet in human history. And that is the destructive environmental impact of animal agriculture. So for many thousands of years, the only way that we've known how to produce meat, fish, and dairy foods, which are an essential part of the daily diet of the large majority of the population of Earth, has been to use animals to turn plants into these foods. And that worked pretty well for many thousands of years. But today, this incredibly inefficient prehistoric technology is being scaled to meet the demands of a growing population of more than 7 billion people. And that is, at this point, rapidly turning into a rocket ship to environmental apocalypse. So you're not going to, so technology is supposed to solve problems. I mean, good technology is supposed to solve problems. This problem is not going to be solved by telling people to change their diets. In fact, 2 years ago, China advised its citizens, asked its citizens to reduce their consumption of meat and dairy products by half. And what happened? Absolutely nothing. In fact, not only did the demand not go down, it continued to increase faster than population growth. So that's not the solution. So 7 years ago, Impossible Foods recognized that actually that there was potentially a simple solution to the problem, a simple but challenging solution to the problem, and that was to develop an entirely new technology for producing these foods and producing them not just more sustainably, but actually taking advantage of the fact that unlike the incumbent technology animals, we can build a technology that's continuously improvable in every dimension, much the same way that motorized transportation replaced the horse. Initially, it was barely running even with the horse, but the horse never got any faster. And the newer technology had the huge advantage of being continuously improvable. So our thesis was that we could develop a better technology for producing these foods and make them better in every way, not just more sustainable, but better in every way that matters to consumers. Most importantly, deliciousness, but also nutrition, versatility, safety, and affordability. So with that idea, we put together the best R&D team by far ever to work in the food industry. One of the best, I would say arguably the best R&D team in the entire biotechnology industry. And within a year, they had cracked the molecular code of meat flavor, basically. And in the years since, they've never slowed down. They're continuing on a tear, making discoveries and new innovations every day. So that's the reason why Impossible Foods belongs at CES. I would say that we're not just a technology company. We are, right now, the most important technology company on Earth.
Wow. Okay. So just briefly, can you just explain what is the Impossible Burger 2.0? How is it different and how is it special?
Okay, so 2 years ago we launched the first Impossible Burger, and it was within a month being served by many of the best, most respected chefs in the world and some of the best restaurants in the world. And in the past year, and we've continued to grow in the past year, we've grown from 400 to more than 5,000 restaurants, including not just destination gourmet restaurants like the Border Grill, but also popular, accessible burger chains like White Castle, where you can actually in Las Vegas, if you want, just pop out and buy a $2 Impossible Slider, which has been called one of the best fast food burgers in the world, full stop. So that was the original Impossible Burger. A year ago, and David can tell you more about this, we challenged ourselves. We took a lot of input from chefs and consumers to figure out what they would like us to make better, taking advantage of the fact that, the cow is not doing this, by the way. The cow stopped trying to improve 1 million years ago. It's not talking to its customers. It never really was trying to be that good at making meat, and it isn't. We took this job seriously, so we collected a lot of input about what we could do to make it better. We made a list of about a dozen things that we wanted to improve. We set ourselves a high bar, and we blasted through every target. So the new Impossible Burger 2.0 is demonstrably better in flavor, in texture, in juiciness. It's got a better nutritional profile. It's got lower calories, better quality protein, lower fat, lower saturated fat, lower salt. It's gluten-free, and it's got a more sustainable supply chain. So that's Impossible 2.0. And by the way, the minute that we put Impossible 2.0 into production, we were already working on 3.0, and that's our secret sauce, that unlike the cow, we are going to be getting better every single day from now until forever.
And well, let's ask the next question to Dr. David Lipman then. So Tell us, Pat just mentioned gluten-free, lower calorie, more bioavailable iron, better nutritional profile, and rivals ground beef from cow cadavers for taste. So can you tell us how you did it?
In 1 minute? No. Sorry. Well, we actually set quantitative goals for ourselves for all of these properties. I mean, trying to come up with a quantitative goal for grillability can be a challenge, but we really want to actually make our burger easier to grill than beef. Just one of the many. We had nutritional goals, really set ambitious goals. In looking at the team who worked on this, realized we could not, this is not something we could do by incrementally changing the original recipe. We had to take everything we learned over the last 7 years and really apply it to come up with a quite a different paradigm, which is now the 2.0 burger. One of the things that, in addition to understanding tens of thousands of proteins from plants and just many, many hundreds of ingredients and really studying them in detail, is over the last year and a half, we really learned more how they all work together. And one of the real secrets of the 2.0 burger is how all of the ingredients come together to improve flavor, juiciness, texture, and so forth. So we're really excited about that.
Okay, great. Is there something burning out there?
I think they're just putting
It really
log
does.
on the fire.
It really does grill really well. Joking. No, so Mary Sue, you're a super award-winning chef. You are not a paid shill for Impossible Foods. She's a customer. Tell us your honest opinion about this new 2.0 product and what your experience is handling it in the kitchen.
Well, we've been serving it for a couple of years already, the first version, and this new version is exceptionally delicious and hugely improved. I'm really excited about it because it actually coheres, and like you said, we can grill it now. We can also brown it and use it in chili or empanadas or tacos, as you're going to taste after we're done talking at you. But it's quite amazing in flavor as well. I'm really tickled. We've only had it for a couple weeks that we've been able to play with it, but I think I think if you haven't tasted it yet, you're gonna be amazed.
I have another question for you because you were just recently at MIT working in the media lab trying to think about new ways to make food more sustainable. But the real question is here in Las Vegas, whether you're drunk at 3 a.m. at White Castle or whether you're here on a weekend holiday, are consumers actually ready for a sustainable food? Do they even think about it? What's been your experience?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of customers really care about the environment. They care about their bodies. They really want to make a difference. But, they don't have very many ways to do things, and they feel pretty powerless. So on our menus, I take it very seriously as a chef, as my responsibility to come up with ways that my customers can be delighted with flavor, first and foremost, and great service, of course, but also that we could be responsible to the planet and come up with, many different choices. At least 35% of our menu is either 80% plant-based or more. And I take my platform seriously, that I want to help people think about how they can make choices that make a difference. This is a tool in my toolbox that really expands my repertoire to be able to create dishes that are going to be good for the planet and good for your body.
Thanks. Anyway, I want to open this up to questions. Yeah, go for it.
So, have you patented or are you going to seek patent protection for Impossible Burger and Impossible Burger 2? Or are you going the trade secret route to not, the secret sauce really, for making foods?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is, are we going to patent some of the core technology in the Impossible Burger 2.0 or use trade secrets? To some degree, both, but I would say that we made a very deliberate decision early on that was based on the premise that actually with today's sort of technical tools, it's trivial, or not trivial, but it's doable for a good biochemist, molecular biologist to pretty much reverse engineer any food that's out there, and therefore a trade secret's not a secret for long. And so we have filed patents on the most important technologies. We have patents pretty much around the world that cover the use of our magic ingredient heme, which is really the molecular key to the unique flavor profile of meat of every kind. And we have patents that cover a lot of the other essential technologies in our burger, and we're going to continue to do that. I think that that's the best way to protect it. Yeah, the question is, I didn't hear the whole question, but it had to do with what about people who have concerns about genetically modified organisms. So to preface the question, the magic ingredient for meat flavor in meat from animals is a molecule called heme. It's found in every living cell, plant or animal. It's the molecule that carries oxygen in your blood. That's what it's most familiar for, but it's actually found in plants as well. And we discovered, heme has been known forever, but we discovered that heme is actually the catalyst that is responsible for all the flavors that are uniquely associated with meat. And in fact, it's associated with this behavior of meat that is probably the reason why chefs love it, which is that if you cook anything made from plants, basically it gets warmer and maybe sometimes mushier, but no magic happens. If you cook meat, it completely transforms. There's an explosion of chemical reactions that happens in meat when it cooks to produce this burst of aroma and novel flavors. No plant does that, and the reason is because the heme concentrations in animal tissues are hundreds to thousands times higher than in any plant, and heme is one of the living world's best catalysts, so it catalyzes those reactions. Well, we discovered that very early on, and we went looking for a scalable plant source of a heme protein. Heme needs to be bound by a protein. And we thought we found one in soy-like hemoglobin, but when we tried to really develop a sustainable, scalable way to produce it, we found that really we were not satisfied with the environmental impact. It involved digging up a lot of soil and was very hard to scale. And so we chose instead to take the gene for this protein, soy-like hemoglobin, and introduce it into yeast cells, the same, basically a close cousin of a yeast that's used in Belgian beers. And that would enable the yeast cells to produce very sustainably, with a very low environmental footprint, arbitrarily large amounts of this heme protein. The protein itself is incredibly safe. It's been thoroughly reviewed by the FDA based on thousands of pages of safety data we provided to them. The fact that it's produced by genetic engineering is a complete non-issue from a consumer safety standpoint. In fact, it's a way safer way to produce it than isolating it from soybean roots, and vastly safer way to produce it than covering the entire frigging planet with cows, which is the way we're doing it now. And so we made a very deliberate choice, because we are trying to vastly reduce the environmental impact of the food system and make the food system safer. This was the best way to do it. We've had lots of conversations with consumers about it. I would say my experience is all you have to do is just explain, answer every question they have, and they will realize that, boy, this is the right way to do it. It's in the best interest of consumers and the world, and that's been our experience.
Yeah, and I would just jump in and also say that from my perspective, in the last year, I've been in food conferences in Stockholm and London and in New York and at MIT at the Media Lab, and I really feel that I'm no scientist, so I don't know, but I've been really learning more about GMO being something that has been going on for a long time as far as plants and splicing and putting together different, parts of a plant. So The jury's out, in my opinion, and I'm not convinced that GMOs are not good for us yet. We haven't really found any evidence of it. So for me, I feel that the opportunities to feed not only the 1%, but the 99% and all the people on the planet, which will be 10 billion in 30 years, we really have to get quick about solutions. And I would think that's a good idea.
Okay, could you talk about your distribution strategy? Are you selling just through restaurants right now, or are you selling through stores, or what are your plans for how you're going to get the product out?
Yeah, we started out when we were just at small scale, very deliberately, selling through highly regarded restaurants, because we felt that given our production being small was the best way to build a brand and so forth. As we've been able to scale our production, we are now looking to launch into retail grocery stores and intend to be doing that within several months from now. We already are actively working on that. I think it's going to be an amazing experience for consumers because it'll be the first time they've ever seen a product made from plants that does the magical things that meat does. And so far, consumers have never really had that experience. They've only been able to just buy burgers that someone else cooked.
And how would you expect it to be priced relative to ground beef?
Well, I would say initially it'll be priced within the range of prices of ground beef in the stores in which it's sold. Not in the kind of commodity ground beef price range yet, though by the time we get to full-scale production in a couple of years, I think we'll be right in the mass market ground beef price range. Right now we don't have the economies of scale, so we have to price it a little higher. But it's not going to be the most expensive ground beef product in the stores in which it's sold.
Yeah, people my age learned we need some kind of the animal protein for amino acid. Does your protein contain every amino acid for us?
Oh yes, I'm really glad you asked that question. It's one of these things that in the general population, I think there's this widespread myth that has actually been, I think, promulgated by the animal agriculture industry that somehow plant proteins are inferior in terms of protein quality or essential amino acid composition. And that's actually absolutely not true. In fact, every plant protein has all the essential amino acids. There are some plant sources of protein that have they have all the amino acids, but they are relatively low in certain essential amino acids. But in our product, we have deliberately chosen the protein sources so that the protein quality, as measured by the bioavailable essential amino acids, is completely on par with beef, and we've experimentally measured that. So it's from a protein quality and nutrition standpoint, it's absolutely as good as beef.
Hey there, good evening. I'm from Brazil, and at least in the United States, Brazil is famous for Brazilian steakhouses with a lot of different meat cuts and varieties.
It used to be famous for the Amazon.
Yeah. Very good. I'd like to understand how you're going to do with the variety of meat cuts and different kinds of meat for an example, ground beef and chicken and, I don't know, fish, for an example.
Okay, great question. I'm going to hand this off to David, but I'll just say when we started the company, we weren't planning on just making ground beef. We started by doing basic research to understand the fundamental molecular mechanisms responsible for the flavors and textures of meats of all kinds. And only after a couple of years, when we had to pick one product to launch with, we chose ground beef. But the platform, the technology platform we built is applicable to pretty much the gamut of meat products. And I'm going to turn it over to David, and he can tell you about our future pipeline of meats to come.
Thank you, Pat. Yeah, sure. We actually, as Pat said, the company has been studying how meat gets its flavor, not just for beef, but also for pork and chicken and fish and so forth. And the discoveries that we've made are actually relevant to those. But they're also helpful for us to continue to improve the beef flavor. And right now, the focus is on beef. And we made exciting improvements in the texture and the chew and so forth for this new recipe. And we're going to continue in that direction. And we are going to be working on solid cuts, steaks, and so forth. Half the market in this country is solid cut, and half is ground beef. So yes, we're going in that direction. No immediate plans right now to work on fish and chicken and so forth. However, the sort of technology platform, as Pat said, and the IP that we're developing is important for both.
Let me say something else about this strategy. So when we founded the company, we set our specific mission as completely replacing animals in the food system by 2035. Not just beef, not just in the US, not just ground beef, across the board, okay? And that is still our mission. We made a very deliberate choice to go after beef first. And the reason is simple. Beef production is overwhelmingly the most environmentally destructive part of the animal agriculture system. It has by far the biggest land footprint. For example, according to the USDA in the United States, 41% of the entire land area of the continental United States is used just for beef production, not meat production, just beef production, 41% of the entire land area. And it's very similar globally. So if we can find a way to produce beef that consumers prefer to the product that comes from cows and eliminate that incredibly destructive industry, we are halfway toward our goal of basically averting an environmental catastrophe. And just to give you a statistic that may surprise some of you, if you took all the cows that are living on Earth today and put them on a scale, and you took every living remaining wild vertebrate, meaning mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians, and put them on a scale and compared them, the cows outweigh the wild animals by tenfold, more than tenfold. There's more than 10 times as much cow biomass on the surface of the earth than every wild vertebrate combined, okay? That's how ridiculous this industry has gotten, okay? So that's why the cow is target number one.
So, hey guys, our next series of food is coming out, I think, like right now. And we want to make sure everyone gets a chance to taste it. Feel free to ask more questions, but I think we'll just take one more question on stage, and then all of these guys are ready and waiting for your questions one-on-one. So one more right here.
Hi, I'm from Bay Area, and you were mentioning about environmental impact. And you know, our Bay Area is very close to the water. Because of global warming, our land could be under the water. By eating your impossible foods, how are you going to protect and fight against global warming?
Oh, awesome question, yeah. Yeah, I kind of resisted the temptation to go on a tirade about all the environmental impacts of the industry out of deference to Rachel and you guys. But I appreciate the question. So the animal agriculture industry as a whole is by far the biggest factor, the biggest contributor to climate change, both in terms of its net emissions and the opportunity cost that it represents. So the net greenhouse gas emissions of the animal agriculture industry exceed all the emissions of every car, bus, truck, train, boat, airplane on Earth combined. But on top of that, the fact that half of the surface of the Earth is being used growing crops to feed animals or being grazed by livestock, the opportunity cost of that is the equivalent of 17 years worth of fossil fuel burning, and I can give you the calculations. In other words, the amount of biomass, because on that land, you don't accumulate biomass. As soon as the grass grows, the cows eat it. As soon as the crops grow, you mow them down and feed them to animals. You never accumulate biomass. That opportunity cost is equivalent to, in terms of carbon dioxide, 17 years worth of fossil fuel emissions, what it means is that if I could snap my fingers and make the industry disappear, which I would do if I could, we would immediately not just stabilize, but start lowering atmospheric CO2 concentrations, because the photosynthesis producing the new biomass accumulating on that land would outpace CO2 emissions from fossil fuels. And there's very good data for that. So if you want to prevent climate catastrophe, and you could do one thing, it's get rid of that, get animals out of the food system. And that's one of the big reasons that we're doing what we're doing. And we're gonna succeed, so, but we have to do it fast.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you. Again, we've got chefs here on site, happy to let you see the product, cook it with them, do whatever you want, and we'll be here all night. So feel free to stay, feel free to come back, anything you want. Thank you.